Hi, my name is Dr. Angie Neison. I am a family physician. I am also a culinary medicine physician. Oh, let me mute my other.
Recording in progress.
Sorry about that. Okay, so like I said, I'm Dr. Angie Neison. I work with Sharp Steely here in San Diego. And today I'm going to present how to embrace a healthy lifestyle, a health lifestyle mainly, because healthy, it has a connotation, but what we're really trying to promote is not just being healthy ourselves, but our environment around us. So let me tell you a little bit more about me. Like I said, I'm a family doctor. I practice food as medicine every day. So in that middle picture, I am joined with my mother, who taught me food as medicine in the home, and my 6-year-old, and we were teaching a class at the YMCA as food as medicine. And I'll explain what that concept is in just a second. And then that last picture is me teaching physicians on how to talk to patients about food as medicine and how to optimize one's health, because I hear a lot from patients that they don't get this from their doctor. They don't get any information about how to eat and how to improve their health with food. I'm also a co-medical director of the California Schools VIBA. So I practice culinary medicine and I teach classes there weekly with a chef and a registered dietitian. And lastly, I am part of the San Diego Public Health Advisory Council on climate action, because I feel this is one of my core values as a mom, as a citizen, and as a physician, that we need to take a look at everything with the lens of how this impacts our climate health. The goals for this breakout session: I want to introduce our lifestyle medicine pillars at Sharp Steely. And I want to introduce culinary medicine, as maybe you've never heard of this term before. And then I want to talk about the planetary health and how to incorporate that as part of your own health. And then lastly, I will go through a demo. And throughout the presentation, I want it to be interactive. So please just type in your questions and I will try to answer them throughout the presentation. So let's not just talk about food, let's talk about all the things that improve our immunity beyond food. I like the mind, body, and spirit or soul approach. And at Sharp Steely, we have 5 pillars of wellness. One is exercising. It's very anti-inflammatory. Obviously, 30 minutes of exercise per day would be optimal, but any kind of movement would be great, whether it's just standing a little bit more, whether it's just going for a quick walk, enjoying nature, anything to get you moving. And then the second pillar is connecting with others. So there's a lot of evidence of these longevity studies of people who have a tribe and connect with others on a regular basis have a longer, healthier life. As well as managing stress. So there is a brain and the gut, they're connected, they're best friends. So when they're connected, trying to reduce our stress so that we can improve our health, but also what you put into your body can also reduce your overall mood. Even just breathing deeply can also help. 5 to 10 minutes is usually what I tell my patients. It doesn't require much. So I usually say, take a deep breath in up to 4, hold it for 4, and then breathe out for 4, and do that 4 times. So that's the rule of 4s. So it's a very easy tip I can give. And then lastly, none of this would happen if it wasn't for sleep. So sleep is very important. If you have trouble with sleep, please talk to your doctor. So what is culinary medicine? So the way I explain it is that it is using everything that I know and that I learned about in medical school, in my training, and putting the art of food and cooking and celebrating it and putting them together to optimize a patient's health. And sometimes even reversing or decreasing someone's medication just by what they eat. And so it's not just food and it's not just medicine. Sometimes it requires both. We know that when patients and populations eat healthier, they cook more at home, they're eating healthier because they're cooking at home. And if we can add and celebrate the food with lots of flavor, we can make sure that we maintain healthier generations down the line as well. I'm a family physician and I am lucky to have up to 4 generations in my practice. And one thing that I know connects all of those generations is food. So it's an opportunity for wellness with your next bite. And so I strongly believe that that is the first thing that we can do to improve our health, is to just take a look at our next meal. One of the publications that came out over the last year that's very important was on COVID-19 severity and how it's linked to our diet. So this was a study that was done over 6 countries. 95% of them were physicians who answered the questionnaire. So I think as physicians, we contribute to science. So it was a very well-reported study. And what they found is those who consumed more of a plant-based diet, have more plants in their diet, they had less severity of COVID-19, even if they were infected. Now, they did all these software models where they took into account who had PPE and who didn't, and this was all done before vaccines. So I just want to, again, emphasize that a plant-predominant diet is also really good for inflammation, infection prevention. Obviously, getting vaccinated as well. So let's take a look at why our gut, why everything we eat and what we consume is really important for our overall immunity. So let me orient you. The blue is our intestinal cells. The neon is our microbiota, so our gut microbiome. So it's bacteria, it's viruses, it's fungi, it's a variety of organisms, and there's more of them than there is of us. And what separates us is this green slime layer. And when they've done studies, and this is all emerging research over the last decade, which is very promising, when we take a look at the mice that consume a fiber-rich diet, we know that that slime layer that connects, that separates us, is very nice and thick. And when the mice consume a very fiber-deficient diet, we start to see the slime layer decrease. And we start to see these little breaks in that slime layer. So maybe you have heard of the term leaky gut, and this is sort of where that came from. And so there is less barrier between the intestine and ourselves. So what it boils down to is basically just consuming more plants, making sure that you eat the rainbow, but also get to know other whole grains that maybe you're not familiar with, making sure that you eat plant-based proteins, because when you consume protein, the perfect protein package is actually one that has fiber, has the protein, but also is good for our environment. And that's what I tell patients all the time. We are only as healthy as our environment. So at Sharpie Steely, we have our Be Well pillars of wellness, but also we're recognizing that even if we did everything that we possibly could for our own health, we're only as healthy as our environment. So over the last year, we have a committee, a climate health committee that we have created of doctors, nurses, and other staff that want to join us to take on this emerging increase call to action, because it's going to require a lot of us. It's going to require a large number of voices to speak and do something. We are all on call for our patients. And when we connect our patients to what their health is and their environment that affects their health, we know that we're taking our oath much more serious. This year, we had the IPCC report that came out and said that we are in a code red for humanity. We know that humanity has unequivocally led to warming of our planet, our atmosphere, our oceans, our land. And this last decade was the hottest decade in the century. So when we talk about food production and where does food fit into these global greenhouse gas emissions? And as you can see, agriculture is only 9% and transportation is 28%. But if you think about it, we need to feed the cattle, we need to use resources. And so the food production actually takes up about 37%, so the most. And out of that, when we look at animal-based foods, including livestock feed and the resources that requires that, it's almost double than consuming plant-based foods. So this is why I start with food. Not only is it an opportunity to nourish ourselves, but also nourish that environment around us and be able to pass on a generation to the next generation a healthier planet. So the most important question, I think, is how do we feed our planet in a healthy way without destroying it? And how do we feed ourselves without destroying it? And this question was answered by the Eat Lancet Commission. It was a publication that came out. It took over 3 years, 37 leading scientists from 17 different countries. It wasn't just physicians or nutritionists. It was a scientist from agriculture to farming to businesses. And what they came up with was a plant-forward approach. And I will go in with that in detail. But this is a picture of me and Dr. Walter Willett. He is at Harvard School of Public Health. He was one of the leading authors. And he's probably the most cited researcher in all of nutrition. And so what is this plant-forward approach? So it's a style of cooking and eating that emphasizes, celebrates, not limited to plant-based foods, including fruits, vegetables, whole grains, beans, lentils, legumes, soy foods, nuts, seeds, plant oils, herbs, and spices in a way that is evidence-based. It promotes health and sustainability. So let's take a look at our plates. So if we were to chop this plate in half, we can already see that we have fruits and vegetables on the left. And most of us have seen this plate on myplate.org. And this is just a variation. This is from the Eat Lancet. And what it shows is that we also have to have some whole grains and that most of the protein, the healthier proteins that we consume, should be more plant-sourced proteins. And then again, focusing on unsaturated plant oils or unsaturated fat, and then trying to limit more dairy and animal-sourced foods. So what does a plant-forward plate look like? This is a variety of different dishes from our Sharp Healthcare Hospital. I am on their nutrition team with dietitians and chefs and staff to help direct what should we be telling patients on what to do. So as you can see, that first middle of the plate, it still has some beef in there, but it's not the predominant thing on the plate. It's the highlight is actually plants. And this was adopted during COVID, and it is now available to patients at all 4 of our Sharp hospitals. But then I mainly get patients ask me, but where should I get my protein if I'm not going to be consuming meat? And the question is interesting because I've never seen any protein deficiency in all the years that I've practiced. I have asked many colleagues who have also never seen any protein deficiency as well. So we have a protein obsession in our country, especially our westernized countries, but we really don't lack protein. What we lack is fiber. So if we take a look at all of our countries, the most westernized countries are the ones who focus on animal-based proteins rather than plant-based proteins. So if we flip that and we start to focus more on plant-based proteins or even decrease the amount of animal-based proteins, we're improving our greenhouse gas emissions. And this is a report card from the World Resource Institute. And this sort of takes a look at what does a perfect protein entail. So most patients tell me, but eating healthy is really expensive. And I tell them this, I say, no, the perfect protein is actually one that's low in cost, has lots of fiber, is good for our planet and good for your health. And we know that there are many varieties of beans, chickpeas, lentils, rice, corn, wheat, soy. Those all have protein and they're inexpensive as well. So any way we can decrease this is good for ourselves and our planet. So again, eating a little bit less red meat any way you can doesn't mean that we entirely remove it, because like I say in culinary medicine, there is no such thing as good foods. There's no such thing as bad foods. It's just a pattern of how much you eat of each throughout your lifetime. Another way is maybe you can swap out some of the red meat and swap it out for chicken or swap it out for fish. You can swap it out for shellfish, which are actually really environmentally sustainable. And then over time, you're just consuming a little bit less red meat and you're introducing other proteins and you're enjoying the variety of other plants. And those become your highlight. And then you start celebrating and cooking with other maybe plants, plant-based proteins like soy and tempeh that maybe you're not as familiar with. So it's a progression. So again, it's moving plant forward. And it's not just about what we eat. This graph is a recent study that came out in 2020. And it shows that if we did business as usual, our greenhouse gas emissions, we would never reach our goal of reducing our planet to get to the warmth of 1.5 degrees. We would never do that. So it requires the plant-rich diets, but it also requires eating healthier calories, so the quality of food. And also making sure that our farms get the highest yield when they do plant. And also making sure that we don't waste food. 40% of our foods in our homes are wasted and thrown away. When we make sure that when we do plant crops, that they are high efficiency so that they don't consume a lot of water, a lot of land. So maybe taking a look at more urban farming as well. And if we do all these things, then we can reach our goal with a 67% chance of getting to goal. All right, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to turn off my camera, but I'm going to take you through this demo. And I want to take you through a whole day of what it is that I would do. So I'm going to take you through an overnight oats, which is a very simple breakfast that my kids have been having the entire pandemic. I will take any questions. I'm going to just stop this share and move over to my kitchen. Okay, I'm going to take off the white coat and now let's get in the kitchen. So I'm going to show you our pandemic breakfast. This is something that we've been doing for pretty much every single day of the pandemic. And it is overnight oats. Is this okay? Are you guys hearing an echo? Is it just me? So I take overnight oats and I take a jar of some overnight whole oats. So it can't be instant. Okay. And I start filling it. These are whole grains. These are great for you. and I start filling it with things. So flax seeds are very good for your microbiome. They have fiber. They are high in omega-3, which are very good for our brain health, our heart health, and overall improve the mood. So omega-3s are really important for our brain health and our gut health. And then I'm going to add some almond butter, but you can add some peanut butter as well. So we've got some other healthy fats in there. And then lastly, I'm going to add some plant-based milk. And then just top it with some frozen berries. Then I put the lid on and I shake it up. And I put it in the fridge, and by tomorrow I have overnight oats ready for breakfast. Very simple. So as you can imagine, I make 5 of these for all of my family members, and then everybody just grabs a jar and they eat their own breakfast. It's healthy, it's nutritious, and it's plant forward. Okay, the second thing I'm going to do is I'm going to show you a hummus. Turn the camera on over here. Okay. Okay. Is this okay? All right. So I'm going to start off with a can of chickpeas, but you could do any kind of beans. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to put these chickpeas in here. You can just do a can. This is simple hummus. This is something that my kids learned how to make when they were 2 years old, and they just love it. And it's just really delicious. So get the chickpeas. We're going to add some peanut butter. So the reason why I use peanut butter is that we want to try to incorporate peanut butter for kids as early as 4 months of age to reduce the risk of getting allergies to peanut butter. So put that in there. You could use tahini or a sesame seed. You can use any nut butter, really. If you're allergic to tree nuts, you can use a seed butter as well. So put that in there. Is it better? Is this better? Okay. All right, then I'm going to put the garlic clove in there. And then I'm going to put a couple of spices. So I've got some cumin, paprika, a little bit of acid. So this is some lime juice, but you can add lemon juice, you can add orange squeezed in there, any kind of citrus. And then this is extra virgin olive oil. Again, we're going to try to use a healthier, anti-inflammatory, omega-3 rich oil. And then what we do is we just blend this all together. So this is an immersion blender. I'm just going to blend this.
So if your kids come home from after school and you want to serve them some healthy snacks, this is a great one. You can get some vegetables like this. Peppers are our favorite. They have lots of vitamin C. So you just have a little hummus snack ready to go. You can also put this on wraps, a sandwich. You can water it down, just put a little bit of water and it can become a dressing. So it's very versatile. All right. The next recipe I want to take you through is one that I have taught multiple times in multiple avenues. So I taught it at the RV book classes. I've also taught it at the YMCA, and I've taught it to physicians in my medical group. If you Google beans and greens soup, Dr. Neison Sharp, you will get to that recipe. It's a very easy recipe, but very flavorful. So what we do is we start off with, let me heat up my pan. And one of the things that I want everybody to take a look at is our induction stove here. So this is an electrical appliance. It's an induction burner. And the reason why I use this, and we use this predominantly in our kitchen, is because it decreases the indoor pollution. So again, we're only as healthy as our environment. So if we can decrease the indoor pollution, that would help all of my kids' little lungs and all of our lungs be happier. So again, not contributing to any greenhouse gas emissions. So turning on my stove. Okay. So I'm going to start with some extra virgin olive oil. I'm going to put about 2 tablespoons in here. I'm going to wait till the pan gets a little bit. And I'm going to throw in some onions or shallots. I'm going to throw in some onions you have, whether it's shallots or any kind of white onions you have, whether it's yellow or even red, white. And again, we're going to start to count a number of plants that we're putting in here. Again, we're going to start to count a number of plants. One of the things I forgot to mention was that the healthiest immune microbiome are ones where there's 30 systems are ones where there's 30 to 40 different plants. So we start to take a look at how much you're adding throughout the day. You want to get to a variety. And then the next day, don't repeat those. Try to aim for more. So the whole week, you would end up with almost 4 different ones. And that's been scientifically the consensus as to a healthier immune system is having more variety. Okay, so we're gonna wait till this gets a little bit hotter here. So Jessica is my moderator. Do I have any questions in the chat?
To Dr. Neison. So one of the questions is, you mentioned the importance of high yield crops. What do you feel are the implications of pesticides, glyphosates, on the health of our microbiome?
The implications of pesticides, glyphosates on the health of our microbiome. Absolutely. I think there are a lot of things that are detrimental to our health. And so as doctors, we need to speak up when there's no clean water, clean air, when pesticides are being used and causing increases in cancer, when plastics we know are a form of causing a carcinogen as well, and also being endocrine disruptors. So we have to take a look at all of it. So if you can't afford organic, try to do organic. You don't have to get organic. There's some farms that are urban farms that can't afford the organic certification.
So if you know that they're local and you talk to your farmer and you sort of take a look at what they're using, I would make sure that at least it's not the Roundup that they're using. Roundup is one of the bigger industrial pesticides that they use. But yes, those are all important in maintaining our microbiome healthy, is to make sure you know where your soil, how good your soil is. So we're only, again, as good as our environment. We're only as healthy as our environment. So I've got the onions going. I'm gonna throw in some garlic. And try not to throw in the garlic too soon, because again, we don't want to burn the garlic. Once you burn the garlic, kind of doesn't taste anything. It's more bitter. So I'm gonna throw that in right now.
Dr. Neison.
And then I'm going to use this opportunity to talk about different spices I put in here. So turmeric. Turmeric is a very well evidence-based spice that is anti-inflammatory. So I usually recommend it to patients who may need to. Is that better?
Yes, much better.
Okay, great.
Great.
Sorry about that. Trying to do two different things at one time. Let me close this. Okay, so the way to make the turmeric much more bioavailable is to add a pinch of pepper, black pepper. That will help the turmeric become much more active, bioactive. So I'm going to put the spice in here with the garlic and the onion. And then I'm going to throw in some good comforting spices. This is a little bit of some allspice. Allspice reminds me of the holidays. I'm going to throw that in. And then nutmeg. Nutmeg also reminds me of the holidays. So I'm going to throw a little bit, I'm going to grate. So this is one of my favorite tools. It's a little microplane grater. Now I'm just going to grate it right in here. I can start to smell like a lot of those holiday spices. Oh, it smells so good. Right. And then I'm going to get some white beans. So these are just some white beans canned. Nothing fancy. If you buy beans and you're going to buy canned beans, the price difference, so this is about $1. If you were to buy a bag of white beans, they're about the same, and you get 4 to 5 times more in the bagged beans if you do it at home in your crock pot or your Instapot, or if you could just leave it on the stove for about 2 hours or about an hour. They kind of cook. And so, so it's a good saving tip. If you're interested in making your own beans, that would be the way to go if you have a larger family. So I'm going to throw the beans in. So now I've got the beans, the onions, the garlic, all of the spices. They're all just sort of marrying in there. And then I'm going to throw some 4 cups of vegetable broth. Light. Sorry, I forgot to turn on the light. All right, so we're going to get the soup kind of boiling there. And then I'm going to start throwing greens in. So I'm going to throw in cilantro. I'm going to throw in spinach. You can throw in any greens. So if there's one recipe that I always make sure that I give patients on a prescription pad, if they want to improve their brain health, if they want to improve their heart health, decrease their colon cancer risk or their cancer risk in general, blood pressure, I always say just add more beans and more greens. So this soup
was adapted basically as a prescription that I give patients all the time. Just add more beans and add more greens. So we've got the beans going. We put the spinach in there, and then I'm just going to grab some kale and put that in as well. And then those will all wilt. It'll take about 10 minutes. And because I grabbed the can of beans, it had a little bit of salt in there, so I'm not going to add the salt until the end, because most of us consume enough salt, so we always have a lot of salt in our diet. But if we really want to improve our overall health, decreasing the amount of salt intake would be great. So one, starting off with processed foods, the ultra processed, try to remove those from your diet or limit them as much as you can. And then when you're cooking at home, the 3 things that you can control: salt, sugar, and oils. So typically I say sprinkle the salt at the end, almost like a rainfall, almost like a drizzle, and then taste it, and then taste it again. So that would be the best way to reduce the amount of salt. When it comes to sugar, all sugar is sugar. So trying to reduce the amount of sugar that you consume, obviously reducing it from processed foods. And then secondly, if you're going to be consuming them, trying to add things like maple syrup or honey, because they have bioactive compounds that are also important for your health. But again, all sugar is sugar. And then third, oils. So we want to make sure that we cook with the healthiest oils that we can possibly cook with. So routinely processed foods don't have the best oils in them. We know restaurants also don't use the best oils all the time as well. And so one thing to do is to have your staple oils at home. So I usually recommend extra virgin olive oil. And then if you're doing some high heat cooking, you can use canola oil or avocado oil if that's in your price point. So those are typically the 3 that I recommend. I think to reduce the amount of saturated fat. So we have the easiest way to remember saturated fat are solid at room temperature. So anything that's solid, we just want to limit it. It's sort of special. So butter can be used in moderation. Coconut oil can be used in moderation. Lard can even be used in moderation. So again, just limiting it. And so once the soup the greens start to wilt down, I could either eat it and consume it like this, but I know that my kids wouldn't like it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to blend it and I'm going to puree it. And I did that ahead of time, so I'm going to do the Food Network style. I'm going to swap it out like this. And this is halfway blended through. I wanted to show you how I would finish this off. This is an Immersion Blender. It's a really great way to blend soups without having to put it in the blender. When I did this cooking demo with the kids at the YMCA, they all tasted this and they all said they all wanted it in their lunches. And their parents were surprised because they usually don't like anything green. But like I tell my families, let's normalize green. Let's normalize eating green things. So have some cucumber out at the dinner table, have some lettuce out, make a greens and beans soup whenever you get a chance. Let's normalize green so that our kids are used to it. All right, so this is the soup. This is what it looks like. And it is perfect on the salt. I'm glad I didn't add it. Those beans had some salt, and then the vegetable broth also had some salt. So this is perfect. I didn't need to add any more salt. So I'm glad I tested it. All right, so I'll move this over. And then the last thing that I wanted to talk about was a dessert. So patients always ask me, they have a sweet tooth and they say, well, I really love eating sweets, does this mean if I'm going to eat healthier that I can't eat sweets anymore? And I usually say, nope, we have dessert in our home pretty much every day. And so I'll show you what we do, but we have it mindfully. So this is a martini glass, but it's a glass. And so when my kids see this, they know that something special is about to happen. They're about to get served a little bit of dessert, and it's going to be mindfully done. So I take a pretty glass like this, and I start off with some yogurt. Now you can do plant-based yogurt, or you can do regular Greek yogurt. I make my own in the Instapot. And for those of you who want to have that recipe, you can just follow me on Instagram, and it's under highlights, under the Instapot highlights. My handle is flavors, the number 4, wellness MD. So I'm going to start off with some plain yogurt. And then we're going to just build our layers. So I'm going to add a little bit of some almond butter, but again, you can add some peanut butter to this. Now, these are all items that I have in my home. So, you know, I always have some yogurt. I always have some almond butter or nut butter of some sort. And then we always have some chocolate, dark chocolate chips. So dark chocolate has more fiber. If you consume higher than 60% cocoa, that is actually, that has more flavonols. So if you are going to consume chocolate, make sure it's dark chocolate, and the greater the percentage, the better. And if it's still too bitter for you, start with half dark chocolate, half milk chocolate. I'll put some chocolate in there. And then I always have some frozen berries, because berries are just what I call an investment for your health. So they're very good for brain health. They're very good for heart health. Again, they have the flavonols, they have the anthocyanins. So I always make sure we have a frozen bag of berries to put in oatmeal or to put in this dessert. And so I pour the berries on here. And then I use, because these were frozen, there's a little bit of some juice. Let's see if this catches on. And then I just drizzle that on top. And there you go. It's a mindfully chocolatey, delicious dessert that's mindfully done. And that's all I have for you today. So I am ready to take questions. I'm going to turn off this camera so I can turn this other one on. Okay. Are there any questions in the chat?
Let's see. So we'll give a few minutes for the chat. But we do have a couple questions. So what are the nutritional benefits of eating raw vegetables versus cooked? Is one better than the other?
Go ahead, say that again, Jessica.
Sorry, can you hear me, Dr. Neison?
Yes.
Okay, great. What are the nutritional benefits of eating raw vegetables versus cooked vegetables?
Oh, such a great question. Such a great question. So, you know, I love all vegetables, but when I was asked during the pandemic, the beginning of the pandemic, they're like, but is there one particular vegetable that's even better than all the rest? And the answer is yes. I do recommend consuming cruciferous vegetables. So cruciferous vegetables are high in anti-inflammatory compounds. They have evidence against cancer. They have evidence against inflammation. So I highly recommend adding cruciferous vegetables. And those are typically your broccoli, your cauliflower, your bok choy, arugula, watercress, radishes. What am I missing here? Brussels sprouts. So those cruciferous vegetables, if you chop them and then you wait about 40 minutes to consume them, you increase that potency of that anti-inflammatory compound called sulforaphane. Okay. So usually, and if you don't have time for that, you can just add a little bit of mustard. Mustard powder actually increases that bioavailability. So that's another thing that you could do. So if I were to have anybody consume more cabbage, cauliflower, broccoli, or cruciferous vegetables, that's what I would say focus on. As far as cooking them, or cooked vegetables, so there's a couple. So peppers are best eaten raw. Broccoli is best eaten raw, but I think if you just did the 40 minutes and waited, I think that's why it's better if you eat raw. So garlic, more potent if it's raw. Tomatoes are better if you cook them. More lycopene it's enhanced. And carrots too. So the things that I would say continue to just cook and eat them is waiting the 40 minutes to consume the cruciferous vegetables. I think if there was one thing, that would be it.
Great. And then one more question for you, Dr. Neison. What advice do you have for people as we are approaching the holidays and are cooking big traditional meals for families?
Great idea. So the highlight, like I said in my talk, so I think a lot of people focus on the meat, or they focus on the main entree, and then the sides just kind of get pushed aside, right? But I would say let's flip that around and let's try to focus in on those side dishes, make them extra special, maybe a meaning, maybe a special time that reminds you and why. Maybe make it colorful. I think Thanksgiving, for instance, has a lot of brown foods. I think we see a lot of typical brown foods, but I would say let's bring color to the table. So bringing a salad that has a variety of different colors, pomegranates, persimmons, things that are in season right now. Doing some Brussels sprouts, cauliflower, and there's a variety of different cauliflowers that have different colors as well. Even just roasting vegetables. And then making it more plant forward. So you're not eliminating the meat, you're just making everything much more plant rich. And that goes for parties too. So if you're going to be going to a party, making sure that you've eaten your plant rich meal. And because you consume so much fiber, you're probably not going to be as hungry. And so you're going to be less tempted to give into some of the other indulgences of the holidays that come through at parties.
Great. I think those are, oh, we've just had one come in through the chat. How do you find doctors that embrace food as medicine? Are they few and far between, or is this idea starting to gain ground?
Oh, I love that question. Well, let me give you a little bit of background of me. So I'm Latina, and I learned these things from my mom. So I grew up when I was in the household. My mom's father was diagnosed with diabetes. And so he was in the hospital, and the dietitian was talking to my mom about what they could eat at home. And so my mom, she was young. She wanted to help her dad. She wanted to help control it. So she studied as much as she could. And by doing that, it boiled down to one thing, just consuming more plants in general. So because she started doing that for herself and her dad, I was able to benefit from it. And then now my kids are able to benefit from it. So I tell people I learned Spanish first, then English, then food as medicine. It's sort of my third language. So I knew what fiber and flax seeds were by the age of 5. And when I realized I got out of medical school, I realized nobody else grew up this way. So we don't have a lot of nutrition in medical school. But my job now at Sharpie Steely has been to empower physicians to use the tools and talk to patients about food and food as medicine as an approach. You know, we always talk about exercising, but really it should be healthy diet first, or eating more plants first. Then after that, if you can have time, also exercise and also manage your stress. But really it's an opportunity. We eat 3 times a day. It's what we do. So we all need to eat. So let's just make that next meal a healthier meal. So I know our doctors at Sharpie Steely are becoming much more well-versed in nutrition and being able to talk to patients with nutrition. But also, I am part of the Public Health Advisory Council for Climate Action. And so I know that a lot of the physicians on our council are also very planetary focused, and consuming more plants is what we're telling our patients, because a plant-rich diet is what's going to keep our climate from heating up and warming up.
Great. I think those are all the questions for today, Dr. Neison. Thank you.
Good. All right. Well, if anybody wants to have any other questions offline, I am available on social media. If you want to follow Flavors and then the number 4 Wellness MD, you can send me a question there. I'd be happy to answer it. All right, I think I'm going to go ahead and turn off. Thanks, everybody. It was great.